So I have these 4 or 5 criteria I look at. One is, the first thing is always, does the company have a real growth opportunity in front of it? I don't want to be part of a team that's trying to address a $20 million market, right? I want to be part of a team that's trying to address a $20 billion market. That's always super important. Number 2 is, does the company value marketing and what I do, right? Because we've seen companies that think they know what marketing is, but they don't really know. What they think it is order me up some leads or do some brochures for the sales team, right? That's not what marketing is. And so there's an educational process that needs to take place there. Number 3 is, do I believe that my skill set is a good fit for the requirements facing that company? That's everything from, what the organization looks like to what their immediate needs are, short-term and long-term needs are within the marketing organization. Because I'm good at what I do, but I don't do everything in marketing. So trying to gauge that fit. The 4th thing, though, is the single hardest thing, and that is it a team of people that I want to work with? And I will tell you, having met dozens, maybe at this point hundreds of entrepreneurs, company founders in the tech industry, there's a very small percentage of those that I want to work with.
How do you know that?
That is always the question.
Can I interview all you guys?
That's exactly what I do. When somebody asks me what I want the process to be, I tell them I want to meet as many people in the company as I can, especially spend as much time as I can with the founder, CEO, and the rest of the executive team.
I've done this a couple times in the, the best experiences have been referrals from people that we know, right? That to go into either a new contract or a new role. Many times, for 3 or 4 times, I can go back in my notes and I can look down where I was in that initial discussion with that person, and they're like, okay, the team is this person, and I would write down, and then, well, here's what their responsibility, and this person, and I'd say, okay, tell me more about that person. What is their best strength? What is their best, and have these discussions before you actually interview for that role, so you know that team pretty. You're not going to get along with everybody. I mean, right? But you want 2 or 3 good people on that team that you can really get along with.
Yeah, you don't have to be best friends with these people. That's not what we're talking about here. You want, as we've talked about, you want people who are continuous learners and questioning things as they go along. You want them to be pleasant and get along with them. But again, these don't have to be people you're going to get a beer with after work necessarily, right? It's great if you are, but you don't have to. But that mutual respect for what you do and what they do, their understanding of what we do as marketing professionals, and the value that it brings to the company. I think you know this story. I have 2 quick things to tell here. One is I was in an executive team meeting at a relatively small startup, 40 people that I joined many years ago. And in one of the top meetings, one of the other executive leaders made a dismissive remark about literally waving his hand at myself and the head of sales, calling us overhead. Well, those are the overhead guys, the overhead teams.
This is my favorite gesture in marketing, by the way. Or creative.
Yeah. Just, what to do. Just do it. I just literally laughed out loud. I mean, I was both so shocked that somebody would refer to it that way, but also just the naivete and ignorance about what sales and marketing really brings to a company. So that's number 1. But number 2 is I put a lot of emphasis on the founder/CEO. You and I have both been through an environment where the founder left and a new CEO came on board.
Yeah.
And now I want you to think back. How big of a difference was it over a couple of years between the founder and the next CEO?
I think about that a lot. It was a huge, huge cultural change.
Yeah, because
it's usually paired with, it's in the private equity space, it's usually paired with going from one to the other.
Absolutely right.
Right, and new leadership.
In fact, the headhunter who called me and asked me these questions a few weeks ago, we got into this discussion about how there just doesn't seem to be many CMO or VP of marketing roles available out there. And he said the truth is the numbers are really down this year because there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going on in the economy. And because of that, the private equity world and the venture capital world has slowed down quite a bit because those executive turnovers often happen when there's a new investment that comes on board. his belief was that there's going to be a lot of that kind of unleashed after the election here, and as we gain more certainty on which direction things are going over the next year. And so there should be a lot more openings at the executive level as a lot more investments start to take place. And then, it strikes me, circling back to what we just said, right, if there are a lot of new executives coming into these companies, the massive cultural changes that are going to take place at these companies as well. It's I think we joked about this many years ago. I once walked into a team that was already in place where the former manager of that team was not a nice guy. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
And so I mean this with great affection to the team I was with. It was like adopting a dog who had been abused previously. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I had somebody come into my office. I think you came into my office one time and said something similar to this, that, hey, I'm really sorry, but I got a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning, so I'm going to come in late. And my response was, yes, so? Are you telling me this because you're going to miss a meeting, Warren? No. Are you going to get behind on your work? No.
Okay.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I appreciate you letting me know, but it's not like you have to ask permission for something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And so that cultural shift just on an individual team takes place in many different ways when a new executive leader comes on board as well.
Well, for any leader, too. I mean, it doesn't have to be the C-suite, too. I mean, that
That's
applies to program managers and project managers as well, people that are senior level, people that are responsible for a team. So that could result in some hesitance to bring in new people and, well, maybe we'll just, promote someone from within and, they might be pretty junior, pretty green type person, then they're putting them into a senior role, which could have even worse effects than,
Yeah, I mean, so we talk about this in great generalities, but the truth is every situation is unique. Every employee is unique. Some people are much more suited for moving along quickly in their career. Some people, I've had workers who wanted to do that one thing that they do and just do it the rest of their career, and that's it.
I've had team members who, there's a couple of them who, really excited about advancing their career, and then some that are just like, nope, this is what I do. I come in, I do this, and then I go home. Okay.
Yeah. And that's the level of stress that they want to deal with. It's, they're comfortable with their income and duties, and that's it.
So let's recap what did that recruiter say to you, just for the sake of any technical issues we may or may not have had here.
So the recruiter asked me, had seen my background or seen my LinkedIn profile and saw that I'm doing DTM, right? Detroit Technology.
Down to market.
Down to market. It's like GTM, but with Detroit in it.
Yeah.
And asked me very openly and candidly, said, can I ask why you're doing this? Are you doing it kind of as an in-between thing until the next opportunity comes along? Are you doing it as kind of a slow slide down into retirement? What's going on? And it's a good question, right? And the truth is none of those things. I'm doing it because the market is a little bit tough. Yep. I decided there was nothing out there that I really wanted to engage in full time, no opportunities that really interested me. And so doing a lot of interesting things with a lot of interesting companies has always been really high on my list.
Yeah, and that's really been, our career has been, not what our parents did. Our parents or our fathers, or whatever. They spent, they started working 13, 14 years old. They worked for 30 years and then they retired. We've been at dozens of different companies over the years, and for us to pull over into the service lane at this part of our career, it's very difficult to get back on the highway at this point.
It can be. I do think a lot depends on the overall macro economy. If we're in the tech industry and the tech industry is being very safe, which is where we are right now, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're seeing the massive companies cut back. We're seeing that kind of repercussion, kind of domino effect all the way down through the industry overall. So there's not a lot of big, great growth stories going on.
Yeah.
If things start to change, if the macro economy starts to change in our industry, in particular in the enterprise tech industry, then we should see things change pretty dramatically, I think.
Do you give any sort of value to this idea of it being an election year and like after the election everything will change?
So I've seen people say that a lot over the years, never more so than we're hearing right now. Because I do think we're faced with two very different sets of challenges depending on who wins this election. And it's very unclear as of this moment who's going to win this election. So people that are listening to this may be listening after the election.
Afterwards, yeah.
Know the results.
14 days.
Yeah.
Right?
It is, yeah. So that uncertainty should come to an end. I don't think either direction is going to end up with a massive unfolding of new opportunities immediately. I think the markets take a little while to digest when a new leader comes in place, a new president comes in place, and figures out, okay, that means this, right? That means if in one direction it means, capital gains taxes are going to remain low, and so investment opportunities are going to be good, and we're going to continue going down that path, right? Or it means, a few years ago, the tax treatment of stock options changed. So that's going to have another effect on our industry, right? So it takes a while for the analysts, the SMEs or the industry pundits to figure out exactly what the most likely path forward is. So between the election happening, the inauguration in January, it's probably the end of the first quarter next year, 2025, before we start to see things really take off in whatever direction they're going.
I'm not suggesting that it's a excuse to be, to not do good stuff in between now and then. And in fact, everything that we've been talking about today is the opposite of that, which is as we look for our next opportunities, right, our next projects, our next, full-time gigs or our next part-time gigs, it's important to still publish stuff that's valuable and matters and shows that we can do, that we are the thought leaders in this space, so that when the opportunity, when that interview opportunity or when that conversation opportunity happens, you can point to it and be like, this is what I'm talking about right here. Yeah. Instead of just having to, okay, you're looking for someone who can do this and this, and okay, well, I can do that.
I mean, it'd be great if we all were in the situation where, our phone's going to ring and somebody's going to call us up with the perfect job.
Not going to happen.
It just doesn't happen.
Not going to happen. And
but in the, to your point about continuing to do the work, there's that old saying about 90% of it is just showing up, right?
Yeah.
You have to show up. You have to be a participant in our community, a participant in our industry. And so that means in some cases going to live events, in some cases participating in online communities, but just being part of it.
Yeah, that's another one. So to recap a little bit here too, and what's been really helpful for us during this time, not to recap again, but I'm gonna. It's my show. I can do what I want.
And I'll recap your recap then.
Great. Really be specific about how you're showing up online. Rewrite, reframe, align your online profile to what you want to do and who you want to do it with, right? The people and the responsibilities.
And both sides of that are very, very important. Not just doing the work, but who you want to do it for.
Who you want to do it for and with. What type of organizations, what kind of roles, what kind of team members. Expanding that network, and being in the right rooms with the right people. Maybe stop talking to your buddy from high school or college, who is, runs a pavement company. That's not, with all due respect to him, he's doing a great job, but we're going in this direction. And be comfortable being uncomfortable in certain situations that you might not be aware of. You'd be amazed what would happen if you're in those situations, right? You just referred me to someone who, is in a genre of music, for example, that I'm not necessarily that, as excited as you are about, but it's a cool opportunity to meet other people my age, in this case, other men my age, which I could certainly.
Not all men. There's a lot of women in this band as well.
Okay, great. Fine. Yeah. But you understand what I'm saying. People at a similar point in their life as me.
That is a comfort level that is nice to have, but I will tell you, it's important to get out of that comfort level as well.
I agree, yeah. And I've tried to do this over the last year, of kind of going through all these, really embracing the change, right? Of like, I started getting up at 5 a.m. on Thursdays, or and we got a new puppy at home. So that's also like, well, we're up, like embrace the change, embrace the suck a little bit of like, this is painful, but I'm going to get through it.
Yeah, I will say it makes me think of back when I was 22 years old, that I moved out of the industrial Midwest here in the Detroit area to Boston. And I had never been out of the Midwest at that point. And I thought, Irish Catholic kid named Patrick, moving to Boston.
No problem.
Pretty easy to fit in, right? The truth is, it was very uncomfortable. I didn't know anybody in town. I didn't know how to use public transportation, right? Taking the T there in Boston for a long time. There's just a lot of crap I didn't know. I didn't know two examples here. I didn't know when I first moved there that Packies, the packaged liquor stores, used to be closed on Sundays. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was and you couldn't buy beer at Kroger.
I just had this experience, Kroger's. I just had this experience in Chicago. I was visiting for the weekend, and my Jeep was in the gas station, and this guy approached me walking, and he looked like a normal enough guy, but he started asking me about how do I get here and there, and then he looked at my license plate and go, "Oh, you're from Michigan." I'm like, no, it's okay. You're going to go that way and go that way and go that way. And he's like, "Well, how did you know that?" I'm like, "Well, I lived here for a while."
Yeah.
And it took me a while to realize that, there's a place in Chicago where it's, Adams, Washington, Roosevelt, right? There's a series in the financial district.
Boston has exactly the same thing where the streets are in alphabetical order.
And you're like, Adams, this man. Yeah. And I was very easy. But, if you rewind to 8 years ago, I don't know where I am. But just driving around Chicago, I was like, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go under here.
And so that experience...
It took me a while to get there.
Yeah, that experience makes that first 6 months or a year very painful in a new city at that age, right? Mm-hmm. I had never flown on a plane. I was 23 years old.
Yeah, me too. Same.
And then, then it became very comfortable. And I look back at that, and I didn't realize at the time it was a pretty brave move. Mm-hmm. I didn't think of it as brave. I thought of it as a little bit of just getting out, right, doing something new.
Yeah.
Because I think it's not brave if you don't realize how hard something is going to be.
Yeah, right.
But I am so happy I did that I made that leap. And then again, 10 years, 11 years later, from there to New York City, lived there for a while as well. I was a little older. My wife and I moved together, so we felt we had a little more comfort zone there. Yeah.
All right, let's land this plane. So we talked a lot about stuff today, and hopefully we have a lot of usable content. But what is the essence of our conversation today? I feel like this has been, the many times that we've been in this room, I think this is the one that was the most like sort of practical of us talking about our real life rather than, a lot of these concepts are great, and certainly, we encourage people to check them out and read about them if they're interested. But I think this one was the most sort of personal. So maybe help me kind of land that plane of like, what advice would you give to people who are struggling with this, the current market?
It's obvious people are struggling. I have, lunch, coffee, dinner with people all the time that are struggling to find the right opportunity for them. Mm-hmm. And, it's easy for me to say, be patient. It's going to happen. Things are changing. It's going to happen. But people are under a lot of financial pressure in many cases, right? Mm-hmm. They've got young children at home. They've got families to feed, partners to help take care of. So my one piece of advice is do the work that's in front of you. Mm-hmm. Just keep doing it and get through. And if you keep doing good work, you'll end up in a really good position.
Yeah, and you'll have something to show. You'll have something really tangible to show, even though you might not, have that opportunity now. It's easy to say, but it's really hard to do and that's why I push back on words like luxurious or grace or whatever. A lot of people they can't afford to.
Right. That's why it feels luxurious to me. Is because I can't afford that, right?
Yeah.
And I understand. Believe me, I understand not being in that position because there was a big chunk of my life I was not in that role. Mm-hmm. So I also want to make sure that we understand, you and I understand, that we are speaking from a place of privilege, right? We are slightly older in one case, slightly older than that in another case, white men in an industry dominated by white men.
Let's
older
not
white men.
sugarcoat it. It should be very clear that we're not. It's not in our nature to be. We're not victims. We're
Absolutely not. Right.
But it's important to be like man, this is I want to work.
Yeah.
My wife explained to me. She's like, hey, this is how the financials are doing, and this is how you doing. This is okay, but we got to make sure we hit these targets.
Yeah. You want to do better than okay.
And then so on one hand, I'm like, yes, I understand fundamentally what you're saying. On the other hand, I feel like a failure. I feel like a loser, and you got to really push through that.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, listen, it's 12 months. It's 1 year out of a career of 25 in my case, 25 years in my career. 125th is a little drop, and my brother-in-law, God love him, he gives me all this encouragement. He goes, we're going to be sitting around the fire next year talking about this, and we're going to laugh about it. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I appreciate your enthusiasm. I'm not there yet because I haven't landed any of those big opportunities that is going to make, oh, great, I can sink my teeth into this. I can really start working on it.
Yeah. Doubting yourself is natural, right? It's human. It happens to everybody. It happens to me.
It's also important to make sure you don't share that with the wrong people. But don't share that woe is me.
Yeah.
Right? With don't.
You have your inside circle.
Yeah, for sure. Don't share that with this other group that I'm suggesting people expand their network. Don't share that with them. You got to.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how we access this sales or the selling ourselves. That's the persona that you're selling of confidence, capable.
I will say.
Don't show your.
I would agree with that, except.
I mean, it's okay to be vulnerable. But.
That's my point. I think people appreciate genuine people and being showing a little bit of vulnerability.
But dial it.
Yeah.
It's like a 3, not a 7.
Not an 11.
Yeah.